Well, welcome back to the Op Show, where we bring you the trials and tribulations, collaborations, and automations from the wide world of DevOps and the greater developer experience. I'm your host, Tristan Pollock, and as always, with CTO.ai founder Kyle Campbell. In our best show yet, we have Shawn Mayzes. I should have gotten it right before. Am I saying it right, Shawn?
I've heard Mayzes and Mayzes. I really don't have a preference.
Okay.
It just depends on what side of the bed I wake up.
All right. Well, good. Then actually, I think I nailed it. You're the founder of DevOps Chat, Lara Chat, Unleash Ventures, and most importantly, a gold medal hockey player. Excited to hear that story and your background. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm really glad and excited to be here. It's been, I think you guys asked me 3 months ago, and I keep looking at the calendar every month. Is it this month? No. Oh, come on.
Yeah, it's we are at the 26th episode of the Op Show, which is as a COVID started YouTube series turned live stream. We're really excited about. We've had such a great guest breadth and depth of guests, and now really interested to hear about kind of your experience in the DevOps realm. Give us a little bit of your background of like how you made it into kind of founding this community of DevOps Chat and everything that like what kind of your code story and how you got into it originally.
Yeah. Okay. Where to start? I guess the thing you talked about with how I got into it originally. So for me, I being a hockey player, I was more into hockey, more into sports, and computers were never a thing that was really big on my radar. And I remember going to the school counselor, like, what can I do? I had no clue. And so I graduated out of school with no clue what I was going to do. So I went to a local community college and I was just going to do general studies until I figured out what I was going to do with my life. And I think it was the summer that after I graduated high school, I took a year off because I still was clueless. So that summer, I was given a computer, a Pentium 429. Oh man, it's been so long, but that was almost 20 years ago, I think, and more than 20. And so I got the computer. I had Windows 95. And, I'm happily playing around and thinking and I'm playing around with Microsoft Paint. I'm like, maybe I want to get into design or, and all these different things. I ended up getting a virus on my computer. And of course, I had no clue what to do. And all I could do was get to my video game through the command line, through DOS. And I actually really fell in love with that I had to hack. Yeah, you air quote here. I had to hack my way to my video game to play Doom and Unreal and all those back in the day. And I just really liked that whole concept where I could click through this whole operating system, figure out what these .sys file, .exe, .bat file, like what are these and how do I make my own and just play around. And that really triggered my passion and curiosity. And also by having this computer, I really like the idea of being able to add in my own RAM or add in a new hard drive. And I felt empowered, like, oh my God, this is so exciting. And so I got into, at the college I was at, I started getting into their computer information program, took a bunch of the networking stuff, and it was all Microsoft based. So I learned a lot of, Microsoft Access, Visual Basics, the early days of C#, .NET and all that. And originally I thought I was going to become, a hardware guy. And then I fell in love with the programming. And then I went back, oh, wait a minute, I want to get into design. So I went and applied at another tech school and got into their design program. But then I realized I don't have enough money and time for both. So I said, okay, well, I'll finish my current college and then I'll figure out what I'm going to do with design. And essentially from there I went and got a job and have just been a coder type of person ever since. And now in the last few years I've been really involved in the startup space and advising, mentoring, and really helping companies support developers from that early stage to their next stage of small to medium sized to acquisition or to enterprise level, and really helping them ensure that they can support the developer the best, just so that the developer can perform. And the other part of your question with how DevOps Chat and Lara Chat came to play, what ended up happening was I was at a startup and Slack was really starting to boom then. And I noticed some people were creating some communities around startups and various topics. And I thought, well, I'm going to start using this this new PHP framework called Laravel, but I have no clue about it. And I'm at a startup where I got to get this stuff done now, or else we're going to fail. So I was like, well, you know what? I'll just throw up a Slack community. So I started with Lara Chat, and so it was about 200 members in the first month, and then some of the bigger names in the community joined, and it just went, rocket ship from there. And I thought, well, I'm really interested in DevOps Chat, or DevOps, I mean. This is another thing where I don't know enough about it, but it's a really interesting concept. So I made DevOps Chat. And I was like, well, you know what? I should become the Slack king, slacking. So I went and create Angular Chat, Android Chat, jQuery Chat, MySQL Chat. And of course, I didn't have time to run all of those. And I'm not a sales or marketing person, so I didn't really know how to promote it. I felt I got lucky with Lara Chat because the big names came on board. Then DevOps Chat, it was a struggle because I didn't know anybody in the community. So I thought I'm gonna have to hustle my way to get some members. So I went on Twitter one day, and a guy named Harper Reed, who is Obama's former CTO, he was posting on Twitter, and I saw his message. I thought, you know what? I guess I was feeling brave that day. I sent him a DM saying, hey, I've got this community. Would you be willing to retweet it? And of course, he tweeted about it. My friend Shawn has this DevOps community. Go join it. And then the guy who writes the book, oh man, I'm blanking, Tim O'Reilly. He retweeted, and then he's got like millions of followers in the tech community. And then DevOps Chat, again, that whole rocket ship. And so now I have the two successful community. I go back to being, I'm a developer at heart. I do not know how to market or make sales to save my life. All I had was a landing page, and all you could do was enter your email and you were invited. And we had that for 3 years. And, people would message on the community, be like, I want to post a job, or I want to promote my company. I'm like, yeah, go ahead, go do it here in the general channel. It didn't occur to me until later that maybe I should charge these people money. So then I thought, well, I'll build up the website. And I started building the website where I curate DevOps and Laravel PHP-based articles on the separate site. And then I showcase the upcoming events in the community. And then I also have a job board where people can post jobs. And then this whole thing of being a developer, and, I really didn't want to have to do a lot of work day to day. I think people got saying developers are the laziest. I'm screwing up this quote, but they're so lazy that they'll automate a way to do something. So what I do every single morning with my CMS is I will go through in the morning. I have a backlog of articles, and I think, oh, that's interesting for DevOps Chat. Let's curate that, and let's curate that. Let's curate that. And then what ended up happening was, well, I don't want to write something about this. I'm lazy. I don't want to have to write what this article was. So at first, I just took the excerpt from their meta tag description, the SEO stuff. And then, I might get penalized for that. So over time, I iterated and improved it. And I thought, well, why don't I just have an AI-generated summary? So right now, I parse the articles I like. It then kicks off the next step of generating the AI-based summary. And it posts it on the website. And then the next stage is it kicks off a whole round of social sharing. And I didn't, now me being lazy again, I didn't want to have to code an app for Facebook, for Twitter, for LinkedIn, for who knows what now. And I thought, oh, you know what? I don't want to code all that. So I was using Buffer. and they're like a social sharing app. And I got on the free plan, and thankfully with our domains, we could use name plus blah, 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 and create multiple accounts. So I created multiple accounts for all the different services so that I could stay within the free range. The only reason why I'm open about this right now is because I am paying for it now, because they ended up saying all accounts have to be paid. But anyways, I just went through the process of what's the easiest way for me to get content out there, share news and information, and I don't have to do as much work. How can I automate all of this? So that whole process, I just click a button every morning and boom, everything else is done for me. And one of the lessons I learned from that, which I take into the startup world, where I was at a company and we were trying to build a product, video editing type of product in the browser, which was mistake number one. But we spent 6 months trying to build this whole product, and we're trying to get investments. We're going to investors, and like, oh, it's a great idea, but I don't like your valuation. We're not going to give you, X million dollars to do this. You don't have any customers. And so we built this whole product, and then we ran out of money. It came in on a Monday, like, guys, they said, guys, we're out of money. We have to lay you all off. I'm like, oh, nuts. So lesson learned there, we really didn't have to build this whole video editing software. All we had to do was take the video from the person providing it, go into a video editing app, and then do the work there and give the student back this whole complete video. And then we have our product market fit. And like, well, we're doing all this work? Well, why don't I just leverage tools that are out there? So that's where Buffer came in. That's where an AI generated summary came in. And that's where the CMS came in, where I don't have to do all this work. And I think that's also where CTO.ai comes in, where you're automating a lot of this work just so that we don't have to.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like what we started to say, and this is a little hint to the future, we started to say workflow smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
And I think the quote that you're referring to, if I've seen it, is, I think it's a Bill Gates quote. And I think what he says, and apologies if I'm misquoting, is I always hire a lazy person to do a hard job because a lazy person will figure out the easiest way to do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's really awesome. I just want to give a quick shout out to the chat. I'm Wilco joining us from Twitch. He's asking, what is DevOps Chat? So I think you just explained it, but would you just summarize it for Wilco there? Where is it at now? What's the community at? If I'm coming to DevOps Chat, why am I coming there? And what am I expecting today?
Yeah. So I think there's multiple facets. So if you go to the website is an information layer. There's content, and I'm essentially promoting other people's articles or featured articles or events that are coming up in the community space and jobs for people that want to work in the DevOps space. So yeah, there's the site, 18,942 members. That does count the banned and spammed members. I've been a little bit. Should I decrease that count or not? But so I've left them like
great.
that.
Yeah.
Great job building that. Thank you. So if you come to the website, you'll see featured our latest DevOps careers, which you see there.
Yeah, I think Wilco was kind of mentioning, like, looking at your job board, and you can also find this in your Slack channel as well, right?
Yeah. So yeah, and so if you don't want to join the community, but you want to see interesting articles that I think are interesting, they're all there. But if you join the community, there's people asking questions almost every day. Not all, and I'll sing with forums, and not all the questions get answered because the person with the answer has to be there at the right time. But there are people that are, on there asking or answering questions of how to do this particular thing in the Elk stack, or how do I fix my AWS instance that's gone down? So I get to follow along and kind of learn about all these concepts that I don't necessarily know, and store them in the back of my mind for when I'm in a meeting and someone says, how do I do this? And I just put my hand up and say, oh, I've seen someone do this like so-and-so. And then I look like a really smart person just because I have that little bit of a fundamental understanding of what someone said back then. But now I can go and Google the full answer based on that.
Right.
Yeah.
Knowledge pointers is what I always call that. Is like I've learned so much from the people who I've seen talk about these hard problems. And there's very little that I try to retain fully as far as a core competency, because I like to be a generalist. But if I can retain a knowledge pointer and have the Google foo to go find that knowledge, there's very little you can't figure out along the way.
Yeah. I think you're basically treating your brain almost like you would treat a bookmarks bar in a browser. You just bookmark that little tidbit and that you tag it in your brain, and then you just come back to it when you need it.
Yeah. So what was that growth like? 18,000 members is a pretty large. I mean, that's one of the biggest, if not the biggest, DevOps community that I've seen, especially on Slack. Probably hard to quantify the old days of Freenode and whatnot into this, but certainly within the more modern concepts of chat. How quickly did that grow, and what were some of the challenges along the way of sort of the community growing and expanding? I mean, that's a lot of people joining very quickly.
Yeah. When I started, it was, like I said, it was slow for the first couple of months until I was brave enough to ask someone really popular to help me. But then it was, I would get about, up until a year ago, I would get about maybe 200 to 300 new members every single week. So we get that Slack email saying, hey, these are all your new members. I actually haven't received an email. I don't know if there's a bug there or if I accidentally unsubscribed. But I do know that number has gone down. It's kind of, plateaued a little bit, where it's about 40 to 50 new members a week, 5 to 10 a day. And, there's a lot of people that come in and they see what's going on, and they'll just leave it on in the background. So like me, I have a bunch of Slack communities, and I check in when I can. And then there's the people that are active daily, who are answering the question, asking questions, or chatting. And one of the interesting things about the community is that Slack has enabled it in a way that there's the open part of the community, but the longer you're in the community, like for mine, I don't necessarily comment in a lot of the public channels, because I've made connections along the way. And now we have our own private DM channels, where if I have my dumb question, I go and ask my buddy, hey, how do I do this? And more often than not, they have the answer, or they'll point me on that Google Path. And that's what I see. A lot of people fragmented into their own private communities, or private channels, if you will. But they kind of keep an eye on the public side of things here and there. But yeah, it's a great way to make a new connection from people, and especially in the COVID age, where a lot of people, you can make connections across the world. So for me, if I'm working late at night, I can go onto one of the chat channels and be like, oh, hey, you're online. How do I do this dumb thing?
Wilco asked another question there as well, Tristan. Why don't we call that one out?
Yeah, I see. Wilco is in the chat was asking, what's the incentive for other members to answer the questions? And I'm just showing here in the other panel the chat, your Slack channel itself, and all the different chat threads. I'll pull it up here.
Mm-hmm. But there's no real incentive, let's say a monetary incentive. There's the incentive of sharing knowledge. So one of the things that I like to do, I'll give talks from wherever I can, and I'll talk about different things that maybe I want to know, or I know just enough. But by teaching someone, I actually level up my knowledge, and I actually become better, because now I've described it to someone. They've asked questions that maybe I never thought of, and now I'm much smarter. So I think that's one of the incentives that I think for members is the ones that really like that teaching concept, and making those connections with people. And it's a very social type of developer you have to be, where I know a lot of us got into development because we just want to be on a computer and don't talk to us for 8 hours or more.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
really... Go ahead, Tristan.
Oh, I was just going to say, the best way to learn is to teach oftentimes. And I think, you're kind of replicating some of these same factors that you might see on like a Stack Overflow or something like this, but in a more personalized kind of messenger chat-based function, where you're talking, a little bit more directly in real time.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And a lot of this culture came out of open source. Like the early days of open source, the only way developers were able to figure these things out were on these mailing lists and message boards and BBS way back, if you remember the Pentium days like you were describing. And it sort of evolved, right? It went from like BBS to message boards, where there were more email thread message groups, and then they became forums. And IRC really took off for a long time. I spent a lot of time on Freenode learning from people, but there was never that like personal connection with anyone. There was just a handle on a text-based screen and everyone was just some fake person. But what's really cool now is as we come into the era of Slack, and I guess you see this a lot less in Discord communities, but that's starting to happen more now. At least in Slack, people tend to represent themselves more in connection with their actual professional identity. Their GitHub profile starts to follow the same approach because there's a professionalism that starts to emerge. And that's why I think Stack Overflow is actually a really great example there, Tristan. Is like there's many people, and we've talked to them on the show, who spend a lot of time on Stack Overflow asking questions because the credibility that they earn in their profession by just being able to support so many individuals and have that leverage, I think is incredible. So it's an interesting thing that you've captured here. And it seems like it's a really, really active community. Are there ties to some of these open source projects, or typically projects and companies who tend to organize very well around or in the community through events or other things? Or is it more just a lot of individuals across a lot of different disciplines bringing a wealth of knowledge? Is there sort of clusters of things that, we saw in the channels, chat ops, that's pretty general, for example. But what are sort of the clusters of technologies that you see emerging in here that people are really excited about?
I don't know. Nothing really jumped to mind because it's such a wide variety where the AWS channel might be really popular one week, and maybe there's a lot of questions about how to do something in AWS. And then I forget the name of the Google one, Google Cloud, I think it is. That one might be popular because a particular person is stuck on how they get through their cloud offering. In terms of trends forecasting, not so much, because I see a lot of people come on and they'll try and promote their company or their product. And I have a code of conduct where I don't want you to spam, but I would rather you come talk to me and say, hey, I wanna promote this thing. And I can then at least give it the smell check. I can see, yeah, okay, this is a legitimate product that I think the members can benefit from, not just someone who's spamming across all the different Slack communities and hoping to get a hit. That's more work for me, but I kind of feel like I just don't want to open the floodgates and let anybody spam anything. And then one thing you mentioned there was that I wanted to call out was the personal connection. I could say in DevOps Chat and Lara Chat, I have gone to conferences, across. Well, before COVID, I went to New York and San Diego and Chicago for conferences, and people that were members of these communities, they all went to those conferences, or they lived in that city, and we made plans to meet up and grab a drink and beer or whatever, and or go to the conference together. So on my Twitter, there's pictures of me with people that are members of these communities, catching up. But we definitely have been able to have that personal connection. And I know in Lara Chat, there's actually some people that I've talked to that have partnered on making actual products when they met through Lara Chat. And I believe cool. I should have put something in my terms of conduct that, any product that stems from Lara Chat or DevOps Chat, I own a 10% stake in, but...
Yeah, that's what's his name off of Silicon Valley? That's host rules, right? Yeah. Yeah, I like that one. And so, I mean, is there open source projects that people are contributing to and connecting on as well? I mean, it seemed like they were relatively general technology segments from my experience. I know we posted something in the chat ops thread looking for people who just are passionate about chat ops feedback ideas, because that's obviously something we think about a lot. But yeah, I mean, what can you tell us about how we could, participate in those technology-oriented discussions within the chat?
Yeah, well, the Lara Chat one is the Laravel is an open source PHP framework. So that one is dedicated to that particular community, and just really just being a community for those people. Now, we have a section in there called internals, where some of the people chat about the internal questions or ideas about what's going on in the Laravel community. Now, that's not the official internals. That's just it's a place to chat. There is an official internal GitHub repository where they do the official chatting, but we do have a little bit of if GitHub is not the place to have that kind of conversation, it's more of a like you create an issue, you have to wait for a response, where Slack it's more of it's a chat. But the DevOps Chat one is very general. It's all things DevOps. We create channels for people who might want to talk about this new open source technology. And, the one thing we say about it is, well, yeah, we'll happily create this new channel, but I'm not going to go and spam all 18,000 plus members to join this channel or force them to join this channel, because that's not what I want to do. So you're going to start with this channel. It'll be me and you. You can invite some people that but it has to grow naturally. And that's one of the big things that I don't want to force people into certain areas. That it has to be a natural growth. It has to, and I don't want to sell people on things. I want to give them the opportunity to look at webinars, look at courses, look at products that's actually interesting to them. Not take this webinar and sign up for this mail list, and now you get spammed by this company. That's really what I want to try and avoid.
Yeah, you care about the authenticity of it, and want to be helpful first and foremost. Yeah, that's great. So, one thing I don't think we got the download on. Just jumping back to your background a bit was, and straying off topic, was a couple of your hockey instances. One where you had won a gold medal, and the other one where you were up in the Canadian Rockies. Would love to even just like a quick story, the quick human story on that.
It's a good Canadian story, eh?
Yeah. I'll try and break out my Canadian accent for this one. I don't know where to start. Like from people who know me, I'm 6'7". So growing up, I would have growth spurts and I would get really awkward on ice. So growing up, I would go to all the tryout camps for the high level, and I always got cut just because, the height, Bambi on ice type of thing. Once I stopped growing, I started getting some stability on the ice and feeling more normal. But my chance to, let's say, be picked up by a travel junior level team was not there anymore. So I just kept playing. And so what I didn't mention is that I wear hearing aids, but without them, I'm legally deaf. I'm on that threshold where, I have a great night's sleep every single night because I don't hear anything. Everybody's jealous of me for it, but anyway, so I ended up finding out that there's a deaf hockey program, and so I went and joined it. And for me, coming from the hearing world into the deaf world, I was this foreigner. Like, who is this guy? He doesn't understand sign language. He's oral. So I had to learn sign language, and I'm still learning it. I started getting involved in there, and it gave me a second life in hockey, where I was playing for the Western hockey program. And through playing in national tournaments, I got selected to play for the Canadian program. So every 4 years, there's the Deaf Olympics. And in 2003, I was selected to go play for that team. And we traveled all the way to Sundsvall, Sweden, which is a northern town in Sweden, very cold. So when I was over there, my roommate had played a couple games in the NHL, and I was like, oh, I'm in trouble. this is high level. Of course, I was over there as like a third or fourth liner, doing all the grinding, the hitting, and the shutting down. Not the goal scorer, doing all the fun stuff. But I ended up making that team, and we won the gold medal. and I've got it somewhere. I don't even know where I've left it.
Yeah, that'd be a great place just over your right shoulder there to hang. I've had a lot of Zooms that someone's always got that interesting little trinket thing in the back.
To be honest, I think it's tucked away in the back of my closet, just sitting on a shelf. I really haven't given it the love it deserves. But no, once I finished the playing for Canada, I was like, do I keep playing? And I got invited to play like a low level down in Dallas. And I said no, because I was still in school. And thankfully I did, because a friend of mine went down and he blew his knee out and can't play anymore. So, okay, right choice. But when I came home, I thought, I'm going to build up the program in BC and really give the players, with all genders, all ages, whether you have a loss in 1 year or both years, or just any kind of hearing loss. And what I've tried to do is build a program where they can come and play hockey and learn about hockey with their peers, with people who have a similar disability, a similar understanding of what it is like to have a hearing loss, what it's like to play hockey without hearing. Because the one thing that, if you guys are hockey fans, if you watch a game, you can hear the stick on the ice, you can hear the skates crunching, which I actually didn't know they made a sound until I was 25, 26. I went all that time and I had no idea that, oh my God, this would have helped. So anyways, we support getting all these players an opportunity to keep playing and represent BC on a national level. We play in tournaments across Canada. And then just really give these guys that second, or guys and girls, that second chance at having a hockey career that maybe it's not professional, but I try and give them that respect that I treat it like you're a professional. We have really nice jerseys, and we try and do everything we can so that the player feels that respect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean, is there, when you think about it, is there like something like that you would explain to someone that has perfect hearing that like you wouldn't expect while playing hockey, like kind of like you wouldn't really expect that to be the case, like if you couldn't hear those sounds? Like, are there certain dynamics on the ice that happen that wouldn't happen in another hockey game?
Yeah, so I think without being able to hear, let's say I am skating toward the board to pick up the puck, I'm looking at the boards, there could be someone behind me, but I have no clue. Now, in a full contact hockey game, I could go up to the board, turn around, and then boom, I'm hit, and I had no clue. Now that's one of the dangers of it, and we've had a lot of people in the tournaments that are contact where they had their head down, they didn't hear anything, and they were surprised with a hit.
It's one of the major things I recall they teach you is learning how to anticipate and brace for being hit. And I mean, it's a pretty fundamental piece of full contact hockey if you want to do it safely, is what I remember.
Yeah. And of course, me being 6'7", there's another NHL player called Chris Pronger, and he's tall like me. And when someone hits me, they hit my elbow, and I get an elbowing penalty, even though I didn't elbow them. So we call that Pronger physics.
Yeah.
So quickly, and then you also like played hockey like up in the mountains, like 5,000 feet up. Like, what was that experience was like? I feel like I've seen something on YouTube once or twice of someone doing something like this, like creating a hockey rink, like where no one's played hockey before.
Yeah. So this was a tournament or a contest that Molson Canadian Sportsnet and a few others they put it on. And they put out a call to all Canadians using the hashtag anything for hockey. And it's like, what would you do? What have you done for hockey? And I was watching, excuse me, I was watching Hockey Night in Canada with my dad, and my wife was there, and they put it on. We're looking for all these people. And both my dad and my wife were like, you should do that. You should do that. You should go apply. You have a great hockey story. I'm like, oh, no, I'm a programmer. I don't do anything like that. I'm not special. So when I got home that night from my parents, my wife sat me down in front of my laptop, like pushed me down. you are writing that story right now. And I'm like, oh, no. It's like, if you don't write that story, you're not getting dinner. Like, she made sure that there would be repercussions. That's fine. I'll write the story. So I wrote the story, like, playing for Canada. And one of the things I didn't mention, like, that helped me with the teams, I had an ear infection for one of the tournaments before playing for Team Canada. And I thought, I'm done. I can't make it, because if I fly with an ear infection, I'm at risk for losing more hearing. My parents, my dad went and rented an SUV, and we drove across Canada to Winnipeg in 2 days, from Vancouver to Winnipeg.
That's definitely doing anything for hockey right there.
Yeah, and I talked about that, and I talked about building the BC program, winning the gold medal, all those kinds of things. And they called me up, like, yeah, we want you on. So anyway, they took us up into the Rocky Mountains. We had a helicopter, and they fly 5,000 feet into this lake that's frozen over, and we played hockey. And one of the things about it is we just go out and we just play a game, and we got all the cameras around us, and the people are yelling cut, and we all have to stop. And they're like, yeah, can you go and do that goal again, or that deke, or that movement? Okay, wait. And then we'd all like kind of have a little bit of huddle. Okay, you were over there, I was here, and I passed to you. Okay, let's try and recreate it. And then even on the videos, when I watched it after, I could see one of the dekes that someone took. I saw the shot, and I remember it was a really slow shot, but they edited the video so that it looks like a boom right in the back of the net. I'm like, oh, I can tell that. I don't think anybody else can, but it's like, oh, that's so cheesy.
That's cool. What a amazing experience. How long was the helicopter ride up there?
Well, we were in a city called Invermere, which is on the base of the Rockies there, and so the helicopter company up there, and I think it was about 15 to 20 minutes from Invermere into the mountains.
Beautiful country, Invermare, and in the Rockies. Those are real mountains too. So we obviously here in Vancouver have the coastal mountains, which are a little bit more softer. They're pretty amazing, especially as they're coming out of the ocean. But the Rockies, Invermere, that's some proper alpine skating you did right there.
Yeah. Well, there were some people from Ontario, and when we were going on the bus ride to Invermere through all the Rocky Mountains, they were like taking pictures. I'm sitting on the bus like, I've seen this. Why are you guys getting up? Well, what's the big deal? I'm like, oh, right. Your mountains are hills.
No, I lived in Toronto for a little while, and I'd always leave the city and go to Blue Mountain, which was about 2 or 3 hours north. I can't remember. And you couldn't really say it was a mountain. It was more like a hill that they had snow on it. And it was still fun though. You see a lot of diversity across Canada in that regard. Mm-hmm. So it's like, so it was the official commercial that we all know and love. That was a huge success. That was the commercial from Molson. Cool.
So another question I wanted to ask Shawn was, since you're like at the heartbeat of DevOps Chat, what sort of trends, what's the, in your words, like what's the current state of DevOps? Like what sort of trends are you seeing? What sort of tools are you seeing used? Any tips and tricks and tidbits there?
I think one of the biggest things is automation. And again, it ties into CTO.ai, ties into my janky little CMS that I created for it. It's all automation. And I was even talking to a friend that, it'd be really cool for our code if when I do a pull request, it would spin up, the Docker container would spin up a test environment. And I know there's services out there that do that, but it was something that I didn't know existed. So went out and Google food it, and there are some cool things to do that. But I think all the trends are all about automation and allowing. And one of the biggest things, going back to the way I approach, let's say, being a developer or supporting and managing developers, is really unleashing the developer's power to do what they do best, which is write code. So if we can automate some processes around certain things that make a developer write the best code or have more time to invest in their code, then that is an investment in the company. So big on anything automation, anything that really makes the job of the developer easier, or give the developer the information and tools they need to really deliver what drive value for the company. And I know there's a lot of startup companies out there that, they're cash strapped. I get it. So you wear many different hats. And that's one of the things, like, as you mature in a company, as you start to get your seed round or your revenue, start thinking about investing in some of these automated processes, which again will allow that developer to focus exactly on what they do best. Which I think I feel like I teed up a whole segue for you guys to pitch CTO.ai to the customer.
Thanks. I mean, we really do believe in that. I think there's a lot of interesting trade-offs about this. So I think automation is powerful, but it's also something that can create more problems. And so the more we create these tools that just automatically do things, and we say, hey, let's automate that so we can focus on this, there's a high propensity for us to automate the wrong things. And we actually see that a lot. A lot of companies I've talked to, part of the problem, and this is sort of I guess a dichotomy or like a vicious circle is one way to describe it. Two ways to describe it is companies will start to adopt these tools that they see out there in the market. And I always like to point Kubernetes as an example of this, right? That automate a set of things, which either one, they maybe don't have a fair understanding of what the business driver is, or even what the team driver is that enables everybody. And so they end up adopting these types of technologies, and automation, just generally automation is another one, where it makes it harder for you to streamline what the developer spends their time on, because DevOps tends to lead to more DevOps, and that's one of the problems. And this is why we talk a lot about things like lean DevOps, because it's kind of like the lean startup. You talked earlier about the lean startup model, right? And how maybe you didn't have to go build the whole thing. There was a way for you to achieve it in a leaner methodology. You talked about your workflow and how you kept it lean. I think this is something that's really important within DevOps. And that's why we don't necessarily point just to us, right? In this, there's lots of tools out there, but I think what we're trying to really promote in our mentality is drive a leaner approach to automating the things that matter, and allow yourself to be able to move on from different tools more quickly. So you make it intuitive, and you also automate things that are harder to make it more intuitive. Now you're saving time, right? That junior developer doesn't have to learn Kubernetes on day one. I think it's really important that we look for things that are worth automating, is the way that I would describe it, because as developers, we tend to automate everything. I guess with Bill Gates didn't say it, didn't tell us in that quote, is not only he hires a lazy person to do a hard job, right? But that lazy person will tend to automate everything because they're lazy, and not everything needs to be automated, in my opinion. I think we automate a lot of things that just don't actually add back that value to the developer. What are your experiences? I know you have a very lean mindset in how you approach your technology stack as well.
Yeah, I think one of the key things I wanted to point out was, as much as you, let's say, do the automation, and as much as, let's say, one developer is the lazy developer, and then in a positive sense, when the next developer comes along and they can run these automated commands to do, let's say, it spins up their whole Docker environment, for example. I also look for developers who are lazy but also curious. So I'd want that next developer to run the command, but also ask themselves, what's behind this command? What is it actually doing? How can I optimize it? How can I add my own automation? Or even look at it, like you said, this whole thing here should not be automated, so let's not. So we have that conversation, that flow between each other. So I think even going back to the Laravel-based framework that Lara Chat is focused on, the company I worked at before, we hired a lot of people in the Laravel space or PHP space. And what I started to notice, and I think this is prevalent in the WordPress community too, where you have a lot of people who are WordPress or framework developers, but they don't understand the underlying language behind it.
Very common in JavaScript these days too.
Yeah,
people understand vanilla JavaScript. They're very dependent on these frameworks.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's if you have that curiosity, you'll be I hate to use that term rock star, but you will be somewhat of a superstar developer if you can understand these underlying concepts, the why, the how, and then you take that and where do you apply it in the system? Where do you automate it? Where does it make sense? And I think the other big thing is also there's a lot of developers that can code. We can build so many different things, but there's a difference between being able to code and being able to deliver, ship something, because there's a different concept from writing code, putting it onto GitHub for a PR, but then deploying it. Maybe there's an automated deployment process and I don't have to care about that. But there's a difference there. When that whole thing goes down, as a developer, what do I do? I'm broken. Yeah. I'm sitting here being paid a lot of money to ship nothing. So that's where the curiosity goes in there, and I encourage people to be curious about that, and just really get to the point of being able to ship something, to deliver something. Because the second it's on production, you have delivered something. Now you iterate upon it.
Yeah, I have my done not perfect shirt on right now. Done is better than perfect. Yeah, I think it's I've talked about this a little bit on Twitter. I think it comes down to this idea of like what is right, and I think an engineer looks at what is right. What do you got there? You got one too? Oh. Startup finance? Yeah, I've got that one as well. Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah, I think like this engineering mindset is one where right is objective and assumes that all of the variables are constant from the beginning, and in most, especially early stages. Variables are quite dynamic, and there's a set of control variables that you may have, but there's also input variables that happen along the way. And I try to get people to think about their journey towards delivering value with a set of skeptical perspectives, something like what you'd see in physics or in certain points of math, where you're like, I'm wrong about the majority of this equation, and here's the things I know that I'm right about, and sort of like be doing that calculus along the way. And I think it can be sometimes really challenging to get there, because you really want to know that all the things you're working on are right from the beginning, because you're trying to afford yourself the ability to focus and do it well. But doing it well often means being able to build the plane while it's taken off in many situations in a startup. What's your experience at startups? I mean, how have you seen that go really well? How have you seen that go really wrong? I guess you kind of gave an example earlier on, but in the teams that you've worked with, what have been the sort of key drivers or maybe the key tools that you focused on earlier opposed to later, or later opposed to earlier?
Yeah. One of the key lessons I learned, now this goes back to early in my startup journey, I went to a startup weekend, and it was three of us, my other two buddies, and we were like, we're going to build this idea. We're going to use these 48 hours and build the idea. And we're gonna hack the whole weekend, and we're gonna get away from our distraction, and we're gonna code. So the first day we're sitting there, and they have mentors that come around, and one came by, and he's like, "So what are you guys doing?" And like, "Oh yeah, we're building this product, this contest thing for Twitter, and we're gonna code it. We're gonna have a complete product, and we're gonna pitch it on the Sunday." And he's like, "Well, do you have any customers? Does anybody even want this?" And I just remember feeling like I'd been smacked in the face, like, whoa. I mean, it's such a simple question. It's like, why didn't I think of that? But you get so caught up in oh my God, I want to build this so cool thing and automate it and do all these things. But he kind of just smacked me in the face and like, oh, I better call my contacts and see if somebody actually really wants this, and actually, do I have a product market fit? So since that, I've really taken that to heart. And when I have an idea, or when I listen to other people's ideas and they pitch to me or whatever, I get them to focus. So I mentored, to give back, I mentored at a following startup weekend, and I heard the pitches, and people were like, oh, I want to do all these 4 things. This is what my company is. And I'm like, well, what is the core concept of your company? It probably is this one thing. So build that, iterate on that, and your customers will tell you if they want thing 2, 3, and 4. So really focus. And I think that's key, is really focusing what your product is, what it is you actually want to deliver, and what you believe your customers want. And be relentless in understanding what your customer actually wants, not what you want. Because you're not paying for this. You get to use it for free. You can do whatever you want with it, but your customers are the ones that are paying for it. So what are their pain points? Why do they want this? How do they want to use it? How do they think it should work? Now, a side lesson in that we, in one startup I was at, we took that. We had a customer that they helped us with what they wanted, what they saw in terms of the scheduling of this system, the counting of this system. And we went and built all that. And then we hired a salesperson and went off to other companies and tried to pitch to them. And those companies looked at the software and they said, yeah, I don't do my scheduling like that. Sorry. Or, yeah, you do accounting weird. We don't do it that way. So we're not a customer. And so we only had one customer, which was the one that was getting it for free because we were getting advice from them. And that startup right then and there, when we couldn't sell to anyone else, that whole idea died. And that was 6 to 8 months of development time doing all these things to deliver nothing.
Yeah. They say time, money, scope are sort of the trifecta of any successful project, right? And so what I always try to encourage developers to do is assume that time is fixed. It's a constant. You can't change it. And typically you can't, because it's the project manager, the business owner who's setting the crazy timeline. And so one quote that I really love is creativity comes from constraint. And if time is your constraint, creativity is figuring out how you work within the context of scope, most importantly, because you're not really changing money either. You're increasing it or you're decreasing it based on your creativity. And so what is the leanest set of things you can do to do something well? It's kind of what I always ask myself. And should you allocate that time to it, because time is constrained and you won't get it back? And I think that's where it comes back to that quote that Bill Gates say that's so nice and so simple. It's like there's just that simple algebra behind the idea that a lazy person will do a hard job better because they'll find the easiest way to do it. And really what he's saying there is that we'll prioritize a multiple on your time as the developer, because you really are the person who's going to absorb all of the burden and have to rebuild it if your assumptions are over-indexing or over-biased towards a direction that isn't viable with whatever you're building, right?
Yeah, and I think also don't be afraid to look at other tools that will help you get to your delivery faster. But of course, it's subjective. You have to make the right decision. The wrong decision means you do more code. But that's where I was in the video app. I was saying, why didn't we just do our own video editing in Lara Chat? I used a multiple free account to share social media. Before I had the AI generator, I used there's a bookmarking service called Pocket. I used their API where I would bookmark the link, pull back their summary, and use it as mine. So I cheated a lot. But it got me to where I needed to be, and to the point where now I have to pay for buffer because, well, it's done such a great job. But you iterate, like that quote, you iterate or die.
Workflow smarter, not harder. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, we're actually right now at the end of the hour. Shawn, it's been a pleasure. Where can we find you online?
Join Lara Chat, Lara Chat or DevOps Chat. I'm usually always on there. My Twitter is my first initial last name, Mayzes. Find me there. I'm not hard to find. All
right, we'll drop those links into the description, and that's all we have for today. Make sure to hit subscribe to never miss our weekly videos, and we will see you next week. Thanks again, Shawn.
Thanks, Shawn.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.